This guy has a 64% win rate on Swain support overall this season. Yet his most recent games, he's averaging a 27% win rate on his Swain. Now, you might think, well, fuck, he should drop that champion, right? Because he's only averaging a 27% win rate. And this is what most solo queue players think is when they go on a recent bad loss streak on their most successful champion they've ever played, they go, fuck, I've got to throw this champion out. When in reality, chances are it's not really the champion that's the issue, it's the person. So it could just be bad matchmaking, it could be you're just playing a little tilted, or it could be, you're just tired and stressed out at the moment, you're just not playing good League of Legends. In this profile view, we're going to figure out how to build a champion pool around something like a really successful champion, and then what else this player needs to do to go from Plat 4 to Diamond 4 by the end of this year. Now, before we get into the video, if you are interested in getting your profile view just like this, either live or pre-record, please check out the links in the YouTube description below. Let's get into the video. So currently you're Plat 4 with almost 300 games played, it looks like, and your goal is to get from Plat 4, which is the top 11%, to Diamond 4, which is about the top 2% of your region. And it looks like the highest rank you've ever been is Platinum 2, and that was about 3 seasons ago. So we're really trying to get back to that Plat 2, and then eventually onto that Diamond rank, which will be the highest rank you've ever achieved. Now, I can clearly see you're a support main and you play the majority of your games there, but you are having a really rough run in your most recent games. So we're going to try and address that in the profile view, as well as figure out what we need to do to get this win rate up to 55%, which is what you need to get to Diamond. And it might not be this split, but it could be potentially at the end of this season if you do everything I say and take on the advice from this profile view. Cool, so let's get into it. First thing I usually look at when doing a profile review like this and I see a really low win rate is I look at your champion pool and I go, what is this guy doing that is affecting his win rate this badly? And generally when I see a win rate like this, it's really two things. It's either just a bit of unlucky gameplay or you're playing too many champions. And in the case for you, I honestly think it is you might be playing too many champions here. I can just see so many different supports. You're playing Milio, Xerath, Swain, Janna, Heimerdinger, Rakan, Seraphine, Yumi, and like Amumu, and then Nico, and Lulu, and Karma. And it's just like, you've played like over 10 supports in your last 40 games, and it just doesn't make sense to me because you have some really successful champions, like your Karma, like your Swain. And I know your Swain has a recent poor win rate, but I honestly don't think he's the problem itself. I think you would have just had a bad run of games, because if you can average a 64% win rate on Swain over 90 games, this just means this is probably a bad series of games. You don't actually need to think that, oh, my Swain is unplayable anymore, because it doesn't make sense, right? How you could suddenly go from a 64% win rate to a 27%. Unless you've literally started playing Swain differently, there's no reason why Swain wouldn't still be viable in Plat 4 compared to Gold 4, as an example. You've also got some other good champs, like I can see your Milio actually has a decent win rate over your 50 ranked games on him. So does your Karma. And so I can see that, like, really, I would just be playing these 3 champions, your Karma, your Milio, and your Swain. And that's really all you need. You don't need any more champions to climb to Diamond than that. And now if you're like, well, I want to build a champ pool that's bigger than just 3 champions or something like that. And then I'd say, well, do the 2 ranked account strategy, which is you have 1 account for learning. So you're learning your new supports. You're playing Xerath, you're playing Janna, you're playing Heimerdinger, whatever champs you want to. And you play them on your Smurf account. And then you keep this account, the account you want to get to Diamond, to the top 2%. You play only your most successful and tried and tested champs, which are your Swain, your Milio, and your Karma. And really, that is basically the principles and the foundation of the strategy that you need to go from Plat 4 to Diamond 4 by the end of this year. The second thing I want to talk about after you figured out that champion pool strategy is your control wards. You are not buying nearly enough control wards for a support main. I mean, you're only averaging 1.6 support control wards a game. This should be around 1 control ward every 5 minutes, if not higher. So for an average 25-minute game, that should be at least 5 control wards. For a 30-minute game, that's 6 control wards. And the fact that you're only buying 1.6 makes me think you don't really understand the importance of vision and the importance of the support's role to get vision, which is information for your team. So I think you're probably going to be impacting yourself a lot as well as your team's ability to get objectives, to safely farm, to push out waves, to push out side lanes, to rotate, to gank, to counter gank, because you're just simply not warding enough. Because generally when I see a lack of control wards, I would also tend to see a lack of sweeping and a lack of yellow trinkets, simply because you just don't know how vision works. So that is something you need to work on. Basically, the first step is you just buy more wards and place more wards. And then the third step is actually thinking about where you're placing them and why. Every ward should have a reason. But before you get to that kind of complexity, just make sure you're warding enough. You should always be emptying out your entire support item of wards before you recall. You should always have at least 1 to 2 control wards in your inventory after 15 minutes. If you don't, you're doing something wrong as a support, in my opinion. Now, the third thing that I think is related to your champ pool and to your lack of vision is your deaths. You are averaging 6.1 deaths overall in your 400 support games, but in your last 40, you're averaging 6.7, and this is just a little too high. Particularly, you're not playing that heavy engaged supports like Milio and Karma should not be dying too much, and I guess I can see that your death rate is quite low on them. Whereas, you've played all these recent champs and you've got quite a high average death in your last 40. And so I would really be looking at figuring out if you can cut your champion pool down. I think this death rate will lower, but you also got to figure out why you're dying so much on Swain. I would try to be aiming for about 5.5 deaths per game on Swain. The fact that you're at 6.3 isn't too alarming, but it's probably one of the reasons why you're probably not winning as many of your recent Swain games is you might just be dying a bit too much. Maybe you're playing a bit too aggressive. Maybe you're forcing, because Swain, you're really just there to poke, get some pulls, and then your ult is really just to engage if you need to. Like, you should not be leading the charge as Swain support. You should be really relying on your jungler or your top laner or whatever your engaged teammate is, and then you follow up with your Swain on your ult. I've played a lot of Swain support and I always get sucked into trying to engage or trying to carry the team fight with my ultimate, and you're a support Swain. You just don't deal enough damage generally to do that, and so that's probably why I think you're having so many deaths. Now, Timmy, I think if you implemented all those things and you actually were able to improve them, you could definitely climb higher. You could easily get back to your gold ranker plat 2 and potentially diamond. However, most players aren't able to implement the things I've told them, and it's either they don't know how or they don't have the commitment. So if you think you're a person who does have the commitment, but you're not quite sure how you're going to get from plat 4 to diamond, even with the advice I've given you, what I'd recommend is once you've watched this, please reach out to me and we can book a free call together where we can talk about customizable coaching solutions to help you get to your goal of plat to diamond. For something like that, what I generally recommend for players when I'm climbing them to diamond with my coaching is I recommend like a monthly coaching plan where we set your goals out, we build your champion pool, and then we basically create a list of all the issues you have that is currently holding you back from plat 4 to diamond. Warding, dying too much, champion pools too big, and we basically put them in a list and prioritize them in order of most important to least important to fix in order for you to climb. And we basically build a checklist, and once we get down to the bottom of that checklist, that's when you should be able to get to diamond, or you're already diamond by the time we get to that checklist. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what a personalized coaching solution could look like for you, your goals, and your budget, please, once you've watched this, Timmy, reach out to me and we can book that call, or we can just chat over Discord. Anyway, mate, you've got a lot of potential here. Keep playing that Swain support. Don't give up on it. Keep that Milio up and keep that Karma up. But really, I would expect you to play like 70 to 80% of your games on Swain, and then you're just playing Milio or Karma if you feel like Swain's not a good pick. So as always, cheers, good luck on the Rift, and I'll talk to you once you've watched this.